Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, where once again the replay file's balked, and we have IDS Realm No Translate Null against Bravo. Okay. Well, anyway, never mind that, it's just a replay bug, it'll be fine. So, today for your viewing entertainment, we have Rook 1704 in HMS Druid, British Tier 10 destroyer. The Druid is one of those destroyers, you know the ones I mean, the kind that on paper look like they're going to be absolutely terrible. It has no torpedoes, it only has 2 gun turrets, 4 guns in total, and they're both at the front, so it's got no rearward facing offensive armament or defensive armament whatsoever. It's not particularly fast, it doesn't get a speed boost, its concealment is kind of bad. I mean, even with a full concealment build, which I'm pretty sure Rook is running, it still has a surface detection range of 6.6 kilometers. Also, the guns only have armor-piercing ammunition. No semi-armor-piercing, more importantly, no high explosive, and they're only 127mm in caliber, although they are dual purpose and can also be used as anti-aircraft guns, but, well, not that it matters in this game because there are no carriers and no hybrids, but we all know how useful anti-aircraft defences are in this game. Also, the fact that the ship is armed only with armour-piercing ammunition means that when it's shooting at, well, anything other than a destroyer, and even some of the destroyers in this game when they're angled, it's going to struggle to do damage. You can't just switch to the high explosive when you're shooting at even a moderately well-armoured target that's angling either towards or away from you. Instead, you have to, well, shift your aim and try to hit the superstructure and hope that it hasn't been damage saturated. So on paper, this is a bad ship. In practice, however, you know, in the hands of a decent player, it's not bad. It's a bit like the Forrest Sherman in that respect. Another high-tier destroyer, and there's one on the enemy team, that while the Forrest Sherman does have torpedoes in practice, they're basically unusable thanks to the terrible firing angles. The Druid doesn't have any at all, but like the Forrest Sherman, it has a ferocious rate of fire on its small number of main caliber guns. Now, because the replay file's a little balked, we couldn't see at the beginning of the match exactly what kind of threat Rook was going to be facing, but I can tell you that there is at least one radar on the enemy team. The enemy team have a Stalingrad, and the Stalingrad has a very long range but short duration radar. No carriers or hybrids, of course, so at least he doesn't have to worry about air spotting. And he and the other Druid on the team, because yes, the team have 2, are both heading for Cap Circle Alpha at their rather pedestrian top speed of 36.7 knots. It's a shame that Team Shimakaze wasn't doing something useful instead of hiding behind the Sebastopol down to the south, because it is the stealthiest ship in this battle, and also the fastest, but, well, I'm not quite sure what he's doing, but it isn't anything particularly useful. Anyway, Rook, and shortly the other Druid, have arrived at Capture Point Alpha. Now, as a British destroyer, it does have a couple of aces up its sleeve. First is the smoke generator, which doesn't last very long at all, but it's got a very, very short cooldown and a lot of charges, so you can use it often. You just can't use it for long. And also British Hydro, which is, well, British Destroyer Hydro, which is more of a self-defense Hydro. To assist you when you are camped inside that smoke screen. It lasts for a very, very long time, but it has a very, very short range, so it's only really useful for spotting torpedoes that are trying to flood your smoke screen with incentives for you to leave that smoke screen. Oh, this could be really bad news. They've spotted the enemy Forrest Sherman. Although Forrest Sherman has gotten himself spotted by 2 Druids, so I think the shoe's on the other foot here. The Forrest Sherman very wisely smokes up, and that's great news because, I mean, they can still hit it because he's having to reverse behind the island over there, and he's no longer spotting them. And both Druids have now arrived in this cap circle. It has been flipped. The team are starting to creep ahead on points, even though neither team have actually scored any kills yet, but Rook's team have 2 of the 3 cap circles. And there are a veritable plethora of enemy targets available to be... Oh, wow, the Yoshino just took a huge hit from somebody. Actually, while Rook is busy farming damage on enemy targets... Oh, he's been radared. Ah, that'll be the Stalingrad then. Not a particularly useful radar, I have to say. Certainly not if they're trying to get destroyers killed. Rook's nice and comfortably hidden. Well, not hidden. They can all see him. They just can't shoot at him. Although, it looks like there's some fire coming out of that smoke screen. Yep, it's the Forest Sherman. They do at least have shots at the other Druid. Unfortunately, the team have just lost their one and only radar. The friendly Stalingrad has just gone down, taken out by the enemy Stalingrad. And... oh, the Sevastopol has just arrived, very rudely shoving Rook out of the way there. Sevastopol, despite being a high-tier Soviet cruiser, does not have radar, which is a bit of a blow to morale. The other Druid, even though it was getting shot at, has managed to get away mostly unscathed. The Druid also, by the way, does have a repair party, so it has a limited ability to heal back some damage, which I suspect both of these Druids have taken advantage of. You know, I'm looking at all of those enemy ships, all given beautiful broadside. I'm wondering just exactly how much damage the team's battleship could have done if it was up here. I mean, the Sevastopol has arrived, and if he'd been capable of positioning, rather than giving as much broadside to all those enemies as they were given to him, and he has suffered accordingly, but if he'd been capable of positioning well and angling up behind one of these islands, he could have been farming huge amounts of damage. Sevastopol, by the way, despite being a high-tier Soviet cruiser, does not have access to radar, only hydro. The team have just claimed their first kill, though. The other Druid on the team finished off that pesky Forest Sherman. So, with probably no destroyer threat over here. The enemy team only have 2 destroyers, by the way. This is very unusual. Asymmetric matchmaking. I mean, we're all familiar with one team being stacked with hybrids and therefore having 4 times as many carriers as the team you're on. But generally the ship classes at least. Oh no, the team have just lost their Alexander Nevsky. Okay, not good. But yeah, generally the matchmaker does a pretty good job of at least ensuring that the base classes on each team are mirrored, just not today. The enemy team only have 2 destroyers. Well, they only have 1 now, it's a Shimakaze. Anyway, a couple of things. First, Rook's just been hydroed. That's probably going to be that enemy Sevastopol. Again, no radar, but it does have hydro. Secondly, the Yoshino's just been taken out. That's the 2nd kill by the other Druid on the team. And that Druid and the friendly Sevastopol have managed to claim the final cap circle. Unfortunately, before he went down, thanks to the flood that he'd caused, the Yoshino did manage to sink the team's one and only battleship. So the enemy team are ahead on kills, although Rook's team are still ahead on points, and they do have all 3 of the cap circles, but they no longer have any battleships. They in fact only have 1 cruiser and 3 destroyers, and 2 of those 3 destroyers don't have any torpedoes. And here comes the Sevastopol. Yeah, that hydro wasn't going away anytime soon, but here's the bizarre thing. A couple of things you might be thinking when you're looking at this Sevastopol. First, those look like suspiciously German gun turrets on a Soviet cruiser, and you're absolutely right, those are German 380mm guns and turrets. And secondly, why were they not even pointing this way? How can the presence of a Druid here have been any surprise to that Sevastopol? You were the one who was hydroing him. You didn't even have your guns pointing at him when you came around the corner. So, thanks to some very aggressive play from Rook here, the team were momentarily on kill parity. And then, of course, the Yamato over there sank the team's last non-destroyer, the Sevastopol, who assisted the other Druid in flipping the cap circle to the north, has just gone down. And then it gets worse. The team's other remaining destroyer has just managed to get himself sunk, the Shimakaze, who, let's face it, thus far hasn't really been much use to the team alive. But just so you all fully appreciate the magnitude of that Shimakaze's ineptitude, a destroyer that is both the fastest and stealthiest ship in this battle, with a surface detection range of something like 5.6 kilometers and a top speed in excess of 40 knots, allowed himself to get blown out of the water by a Stalingrad of all things, not the most subtle of heavy cruisers who managed to close to within about 4 kilometers without apparently being noticed. So that happened. Which just leaves the 2 Druids. Now they are still a good 200 points ahead. Although the rate of points gain, I mean, you really want to kill this Hindenburg because, well, number of reasons. 1, a kill's a kill. 2, you are ahead on points, but you no longer have the 3 cap circles. And this battle is only just now coming up to the halfway mark, so there's still 10 minutes of this battle remaining. You can't count on holding on to those cap circles. You have to assume that the enemy team is, and it looks like they are, they're going to try to flip those caps because they're facing a couple of destroyers. And while they're not the stealthiest destroyers in the game, and the enemy team do have a Shimakaze, which is both faster and stealthier than either of these Druids, you have to assume that the 2 Druids are going to try to just run down the clock. And so somebody is flipping alpha. That just leaves Bravo as the only cap circle that these 2 Druids have any active points coming in from. So they need to get the kill on this Hindenburg. And I'm not sure why the Hindenburg is firing on piercing at destroyers, but I'm certainly not complaining. It is extremely bad manners to interrupt the enemy when they're making a mistake. You just let them crack on and get the kill. Oh, you're kidding me. 1 hit point? There it is. Okay, good. Right. Kill secured. Pop that hydro. Stop to take some breath and assess the situation. We're at 976 points. But that's only going to help you if the enemy team do not take that final cap circle within the next minute. And it does kind of look like they're all heading that way, which is really bad news for the other Druid, because they can see him. Even the enemy Shimakaze is getting in on the action now. Rook immediately switches fire to the Shimakaze, because it's the biggest threat, and unfortunately the Druid has gone down, which means that Rook is now the last surviving member of his team, on 940 points against a Shimakaze, who can both outrun and outspot him, and has very sensibly smoked up a Yamato and a Sevastopol, and he has no torpedoes or high explosive shells. The other Druid was very unlucky, by the way, because he got detonated. The enemy team are actually having a good laugh at him now in chat because he wasn't running a detonation flag. And I found myself at this moment thinking, Rook, what are you doing? You're at 964 points. You do have a cap circle. All you have to do is stay alive for the next minute and you'll win. Are you trying to win harder here? What's going on? Sanity, however, does then prevail, and he does smoke up before that Yamato, and by the look of it, also firing from the smoke screen, the Shimakaze, and now the Sevastopol can win this game by taking him out. He's popped the smoke, but of course now that means he can't see the target. Well, he can see the Yamato when it fires its guns, because that thing has a concealment radius when firing that's roughly equivalent to the state of Florida. But that doesn't really help him because, well, 127mm armor piercing is going to take roughly an hour to sink something the size and hit points of a Yamato. And then things get even worse because the Sevastopol is flipping the cap circle at Bravo. He was 15 points away from winning, and he would have gotten away with it too if it hadn't been for that pesky Sevastopol. So now, time is no longer on his side. He has to get a kill, and he has to get one fast. And now he can't see anything. And that Sevastopol will be coming this way. And it does have hydro. They're probably all coming for him. Or at least the Yamato and the Sevastopol. And why shouldn't they? He doesn't have torpedoes. He only has 127mm guns. And he's been detected. Wait. The Shimakaze? Okay, it's going to take him a long time to kill the Yamato. But it's going to take him no time at all to kill the Shimakaze. 5.6 kilometer stealth sails to within 4.4 kilometers of the one thing on the enemy team that is capable of killing him just about instantly and needs one kill in order to win. What is it about Shimakaze players? They do have something of a reputation in World of Warships, don't they? Well, anyway, we're certainly not complaining. We'd like to thank that Shimakaze, without whose contribution this would have been a guaranteed loss for Rook in the British Tier 10 destroyer, HMS Druid. Hope you enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.